Ahoj, ahoj. Kokos Magorina. Docela bomby. Docela bomby.
Mám pocit, že tu bola raz jedna študentka, čo sa sťažovala, že z počítačovej miestnosti, že nešlo pripojiť si na sústku alebo niečo také.
Sranda. Neviem ti povedať. A nedostalo sa to ani ku mne, takže... Viem, ktorá tá obarlačka, áno, to je známa firma.
Ale ona si akože bola
Hej, ok, zatiaľ, díky, ahoj. Áno? Áno, ja to riešim, ja to viem, rieši to kolega Paška, takže treba počkať, kým sa všetci pripoja, dobre? Nič, stačí, keď sa pripojíte iba na tú jednu, na ten jeden, do toho jedného kanála a Dušan akurát vyhadzuje všetkých tých, ktorí sú pomimo, aby sa lebo každý si začal svoju schôdzu a potom sa pripájajú halabala a není to cez ten verejný link. Čiže to je jediný problém, hej? Takže Dušan to teraz už ich tam pomaly vyhadzuje a zapína ich do toho pravého streamu, hej? Do toho, kde sa to má diať. Aha, áno, dobre, ja vás tam pozvem, áno, už som to pochopil, Dobre, idem na to sekundu. Dobre, ok.
Vážení kolegovia, musíme tu povedať, aby sa nás pustili viaceré kanály, čo sa týka domestných, takže teraz proste riešime ten problém a tam sa pripája pandeka. I apologize when I speak in Slovak that we have a small problem with that we start two different channels and our IT techniques they just managing, so in a few minutes we start. Thank you.
Can you confirm me correct channel?
Yes, Professor. We are in the correct channel. Stay here.
Dobrý deň, prajeme. Môžem vám počať otázku? Ja zdieľam obrázok Almáčka, Mária a Jana. Nemám, je to len ja, ale ja som na tomto kanáli a na zradaku.
Ja takisto na zdieľu kanálu. A ja na Asisa Kondiši.
Keď si idete na ne a jedný z nás, tak sa vás vyhlásil, tak na kanál. Začneme od kanála, začneme klikať od kanála.
Ďakujem.
Ktorý máš? Každopádne ja som si vyskúšal všetko možno, som bol aj v inom kanáli paralelnom, takže dnes je to zábavné.
Áno, počujem vás.
Ale myslím si, keď aj pozerám na počet prihlásených, si vedomím toho, že...
Áno, som.
Že by sme mohli začať robiť prezenciu, tak ťa poprosím.
Ďakujem pekne.
Aha. Viem vás tam pozvať. Dobre, pozriem sa na to. Hej, lebo nejak to tam blbne všetkým, takže neviem, že čo tam je za problém. Dobre, idem na to. Zatiaľ. Áno. Dobre, zatiaľ.
Pán profesor Bratislava. Pán profesor Bratislava.
Ospravedlňujem sa. Dobrý deň prítomný.
Ďakujem, pán profesor. Pán profesor Tinderlík sa ospravedlňujem, ale výsledkovo poviem. Pani Vysoká Milačenská.
Dobrý deň.
Pán profesor Pávrik.
Príjemný deň prítomný.
Upravím si sa sluchátka, stačí iba rozprávať. Dobre? Ja to hovorím na veci.
Okay, we'll now check the presence of participants of this meeting.
Skúsiť niečo rozprávať, teraz dajme tu 40 sekúnd do toho streamu. 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, čiže...
1, 2, teda. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2. Now for the members of the inaugural committee.
Je tam takých 10 sekúnd plus minus. Dobre? Čiže s tým treba počítať.
Now Professor Michal Tomášek. This will take a while. Now Professor Simon. Let's see if I don't see him. we have to wait to Professor Tomaszka or to Professor Simon, at least to one of them, so that committee has enough members, because we need at least 3 members of committees and at least 2 opponents. This means we need to wait for 1 member committee member. But as for the point 1, that's vote. So let me state that 36 of 50 members of the scientific board, 34 is needed. Some of the members has announced that they will connect later, so we are enough members. This means that we can move to point number 2, that is the approval of program. The program of the session you received, all of you. My question is whether you have some proposals to change this program of the session. Since there are no proposals or addings, it is as it is, and we'll see soon the vote about this program. We shall also vote about the scrutators, which means the point number 2. And I propose Professor Brtka and Andrašek. I ask whether there are some proposals to other scrutators. If there are no such proposals, the discussion to this point is closed hereby, and I will ask you to vote for about the point number 1 and number 2. This means the approval of program and approval of the scrutators. If there are any issues, technical or whatsoever, please let us know about this. So we have one technical issue at the moment, but this is being solved right now. It seems the issue persists, so I've received some advice from another member of the board. Just to remark, Professor Gerloff is in another meeting, so We ask for patience while the technical problems are being solved. Yes. Myslím, že to je OK. Majú teraz technické problémy, ale... So hereby ask scrutators about the votes. As for the point 1, 34 answers, and as for the point 2, 30 answers. I would hereby ask you to vote as to the point number 2. It would be good if we would have 34s, 4 votes valid. And hereby we have 34 valid votes as for the point number 2 as well. This means that if there are no more voters, so I end this vote for points number 1 and number 2, and I ask you to present the results of these votes. These 2 votes look like follows. I'm ending the voting process for both points. So the results are as follows. As for the point 1, in favor 34, against 0, abstained 0, and as for the point 2, in favor 35, abstain 1. So this means that these 2 points are approved. There are 37 at the moment. That welcome Assistant Professor Letton Sterik as well, and I still don't see Professor Simon with us from the Pan-European School of Law. Professor Tomaszek would like to access the meeting, but he's facing some technical issues as well. Do we know something about Professor Simon? No, he's not picking the phone. Meanwhile, we can state that we are enough members to proceed further. I would like to ask you one more second and patience. We are still waiting for. It seems that Professor Tomaszek has accessed. I apologize to all of us. This is due to our new computational system. There are several issues at the moment, so this is the reason why I'm being late, and I apologize for this. Welcome amongst us. Never mind. We hereby can now continue to the point number 2, which is proceedings for appointment as assistant professor Ondrej Blažo in the domain of international law. We are enough members, 37 members to be precise. There are 3 or 4 committee members and 2 opponents. I hereby give floor to chair of the inaugural committee, Professor Svák. The floor is yours. Thank you very much, dear chairman of the scientific board, ladies and gentlemen. Let me introduce the members, especially members of the inaugural committee. Professor Bernardo Cortisi from the University of Padova, Professor Michal Tomaszek from the Charles University of Prague, Professor Michal Siman is not with us at the moment, and as opponents, Professor Maria Adriana Almasan from the University of Bucharest and Professor Csongor István Nagy from the University of Szegedin. I apologize. I will read his review. And last but not least, I would like to welcome Professor Slášťan from the Komenského University in Bratislava. Allow me to state that according to applicable provisions of the law on universities, pursuant to internal regulations of the Komenského University and Faculty of Law, and last but not least, and the statement of the inaugural committee from the 30th of May, that was an online meeting. I would like to present the statement of this. The inaugural committee has univocally accepted and approved the applicant fulfills criteria, that means conditions required to be appointed professor has a title in full extent. Further, inaugural committee stated that the applicant Ondrej Blažo fulfills all the pedagogical, scientific, as well as personal criteria which are required to acquire this title. This means that the committee recommended to proceed in these proceedings and to present the talk, which is titled Procedural Autonomy of the Member States of EU in Varietate Concordia. Before I give floor to Assistant Professor Blažo, I would like to shortly or briefly present his career. Ondrej Blažo was born in 1981. He studied at Komenského University at Bratislava, first as master's studies ended in 2004, so a University of Economics in the field of finance, banks and investments. This study was ended in 2007, and in 2009 fulfilled the study of doctoral degree in the field of international law. And as for 2019, he became assistant professor in the field of international law. He tries to connect between the theory and praxis. He also worked at the tax office of the Slovak Republic. And from 2009 to 2016, he worked at the Antitrust Bureau of Slovak Republic. Since 2010, he teaches at the Komenského University in Bratislava. Where he's mostly dealing with competition law and international law. If there are pauses in my presentation, this is due to the fact that this is being translated into English. Now I allow myself to I ask Assistant Professor Andrej Blaža to present his speech, inaugural speech, and I ask him to withhold the limit of approximately 20 minutes. Assistant Professor, the floor is yours. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. My question is whether I succeeded in sharing the screen. Yes, it is okay. Do you see the full screen or it's readable? Let me just check if I share it indeed with all of you. Okay, now it should be okay. Not yet. I'll try to do it one more time. This is better, yes. I apologize for the delay. I would much rather present it personally, but there are some restrictions. Dear Chairman of Inaugural Committee and Chairman of the Scientific Board, members of Inaugural Committee and Scientific Board, allow me to present my presentation and my theme, which is procedural autonomy of the European Union member states in Varietate Concordia. Why I chose this topic? Why to present this theme? Anyway, the inspiration sources are four. The first is, in today's society, there are anew. These principles are being tested under scrutiny. Those venerable old principles of EU law. That means principle of direct effect, precedence, autonomy of the legal order. We face it every day in various discussions in media. We've just mentioned the cases in Poland and Hungary. Another inspirational point It's almost 3.5 years since the inaugural committee on a similar topic from Professor Slashtian on the topic of rule of law. That means that this topic, the rule of law, resonates as a theme, and it is interesting to see how this evolved. And the third point of inspiration is the continuity of research at our faculty. There are several grant schemes, funding schemes related to rule of law at our institute. If we mention this notion, procedural autonomy is longitudinal accepted, is being repeated as a mantra in case law, in the teaching and in the theory of EU law as well. But the question is what this notion actually means. What is its content? There are no mention of this content in the foundational treaties. It was created by case law of the Court of Justice of EU, first mentioned in 2004, where it is referred to as well-established principle. The fact is that it refers to an older case law, which substantially contents this principle, but does not name it expressively. So the notion of procedural autonomy can be traced back to the case of Živé Central Finance of 1976, where the Court of Justice stated or ruled that the obligation of a member state is to designate a relevant court and remedies if there are no valid legal regulation at the EU level. In order to enable the enforcement of EU law, this is needed. So there's a question if this notion is indeed a notion at all, or is it its content resembles its name. So if rose is a rose is a rose, or rose is by any other name would smell as sweet. Just to quote the Romeo and Juliet. The question is also whether the procedural autonomy is procedural in its nature, since there are many contexts in case law where it designates various contexts, questions of evidence, questions of types of actions. The fact is that these aspects, which can be included in the substantive law, just like limitation periods, preclusion, punitive damages, or damages as such. So the notion itself is problematic. So is it procedural autonomy in the sense like we perceive it in the state law? The second point is, can we speak about autonomy as well? From whom is the state autonomous? If the member state conferred part of its competences and retained autonomy. So the notion autonomy itself is not altogether correct. Autonomy should mean independence without any further implications from the outer side. But the procedural autonomy itself underlies control and surveillance from the side of the principles of equivalence and effectiveness during the enforcement of EU law. So my team will be, you can be disappointed because the procedural autonomy does not exist, but do not be sad. We should use the procedural autonomy as so-called procedural autonomy. It's not procedural and not autonomy. It perhaps would be better to define it as a competence, obligation and responsibility of the member state to designate competent bodies, rules and other conditions of effective and equivalent enforcement of EU law within its jurisdiction. And in my research and my inspirations, I focused on in which way are these values of rule of law enforced in EU. The question is how to get from the procedural autonomy to scrutiny or the enforcement of values. What do we meet underway? The question is whether this path can be found in the primary law. Traditionally, the sources are mentioned the aspects of conferral and lack of competence of the EU. Another source is duty to enforce EU law and respect of national identity as point number 3. I'd like to exclude the topic of lack of procedural competence, since in today's society it's always problematized and questioned, since the so-called almighty and multi-purpose Article 114 often approved provisions that relate to other domains of law. We can mention the empowering national authorities in Directive 2019, from the year 2019. I shall not focus on this topic. I will rather focus on the question on the duty to apply the EU law effectively and how to connect it with the procedural autonomy. There are often contradictory situations. On the one side, we have principles of precedence. We have various aspects of this. National remedies, national constitutional systems, institutional frameworks. I will just mention some other principles and national institutional framework as well. As the time flew by, the case law had to deal with a lot of cases related to procedural autonomy and how to apply this EU law effectively. The case law moved between some extreme points, whether it is important to create or expand new remedies, to expand damages, the question of ex officio application of EU law, and so on. What results from this case law? The basic limit of procedural autonomy. So the basic limits is the principle of effectiveness and the principle of equivalence. So we move in this circle, we move to the scrutiny of effectiveness and equivalence. In the case law since 1990s, was established a so-called procedural rule of reason. It resembles a rule of reason from Cassim de Dijon. The Court of Justice has stated that the national rule can restrict the effectiveness equivalence of application of EU law, but they have to test whether this rule that limits or restricts follows a legitimate goal, and this proportionality should be assessed by national judge, which means that the task has been moved to national legislative organ bodies again. So to sum it up, this whole situation, the rule of reason has been moved even further. So the effectiveness does not mean the obligation to introduce some new extra legal rules, legal measures other than included in national legal order, but the problem is if there are no legal suitably remedies, or even indirectly, and in such case national law has to be abandoned, and which is very important or interesting. Member state is not forced to create new regulations, but just to be liable to persons or subjects in question in case of EU law infringement. So we move further to another test, that is the protection of an individual. After the Treaty of Lisbon, there is another test. That means that is the test for the right for a fair trial, according to Article 47 of the Treaty of Foundational Charter of Foundational Rights. And the Article 19 of the Treaty on the European Union, which says that the states are obliged to ensure effective judicial protection. So the circle is being closed, and through this Article 19 and through the Charter of Foundational Rights, we move forward towards the values of EU. And that brings us very close to today's situation, where we can state that every state designates its own structure of authorities and their relations, but the very structure of authorities and their relations has become subject to regulatory and surveillance authorities, or independence of judicial protection. For long we have think that the values as we did not believe that the Court of Justice would directly make valuations, but did not last until the 2021. He began to interpret values of European Union directly since the last year. This brings me to the very title of my presentation. in varietate concordia, how to bring all this together, how to connect the way of functioning of national states and the functioning of EU. On the one hand, we have a control of procedural autonomy vis-à-vis effectiveness equivalence and Article 47, and this is not only being exercised from the top down, but also from the side of member states, and also horizontally, using the principle of mutual trust. On the one side, you could see that the impacts of EU can have an effect of erosion of law on the member states, but there is the aspect of integration of legal orders of the member states, and one can also mention a positive effect of strengthening of effectiveness of national legal order. Another aspect of this is that on the one hand, we have the enforcement of the EU law via national law in absence of rules of EU level. But on the other hand, we have enforcement of national law of the member states via the EU law. This could seem as a paradox or contradiction, but since they have explicitly stated that they identify with the common values of EU, but according to Article 2, the member states are confronted with own values from the side of the European Union. So we have a connection of effectiveness and enforcement of EU law, which corresponds to the very power of the vigor of enforcement of the MS law. So this means if a state enforces its own law, this means it enforces the EU law. Common denominator of common feature is, or the very component is the Article 47 of Charter of Fundamental Rights. That means that the right to a fair trial has to be ensured both on national and on the EU level, so that individual citizens can receive the effective judicial protection, which enables the very existence of rule of law. If you perceive the various overlappings with other branches of areas of law, I would add a fourth reason why I chose this topic. This could be an integrating element and integrating component to further discussions, which would mean that this topic is connected to other topics as well. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you very much to the applicant and Pauline. Now I'd like to open the discussion. Anyone can react. I would like to ask to speak a little moderately so that interpreting now the translation will be made consecutively. Assistant Professor Škrobák. So, Professor Škrabák would like to ask if you could elaborate on the notion of autonomy, how you perceive this notion. Now, Assistant Professor Brejová. this was the closure of the discussion, and I would like to ask the opponents to present their opinions. So the absent one will be read by me, and I will ask Professor Maria Adriana Ravnosan from the University of Bucharest to present her elementary thesis of her opinion. Professor, the floor is yours. Som mimoriadne poctená tým, že sa môžem stretnúť tohto stretnutia a zasadnutia. Ďakujem za pozvanie. Dnes sme tu počuli množstvo fakt o úspechoch, akademických a pedagogických úspechoch profesora Blaža. To však môže byť pomerne bežné. Čo však vám chcem teda povedať, možno neviete. Profesor Blaža nie je prominentná postava v rámci pôdy a Komenského univerzity, ale je to takisto oceňovaný aj na pôde Bukurešťskej univerzity. Do dnešného okamihu sa konali rôzne podoby spolupráce s profesorom a docentom Blažom. Spomeniem len niektoré z nich. Nechcem vám však preťahovať čas, keďže je to pomerne zložité stretnutie. Som bol pozvaný na konferenciu v 2019 o ochrane hospodárskej súťaže. Jedno z najväčších podujatí v Rumunsku. A jeho prezentácia, vystúpenia a predsedníctvo jednej z panelov predstavovalo výnimočný prínos pre konferenciu. Je mojou chybou, že zborník zatiaľ nebol vydaný. Čoskoro však budete môcť si všetci prečítať zborník z tejto konferencie s príspevkom aj docenta Blaža. Vďaka veľmi jedinečnej špecializácii docenta Blaža, ktorá sa týka zároveň verejného obstarávania aj ochrany verejnej súťaže. Mohol sa prihovárať našim študentom na Univerzite v Bukurešti. A predniesol nielen veľmi cenný príspevok, ktorý obsahoval veľmi koncízne kompetencie a robustné dáta k téme, čo sa týka Slovenskej republiky, ale aj na európskej úrovni. A študenti magisterského štúdia veľmi ocenili tento príspevok a boli radi. A ako isté završenie jeho dráhy, jeho akademickej dráhy v Rumunsku, nedávno bol pozvaný aby predniesol svoj príspevok do významnej knihy, ktorá sa pripravuje. Je to jedinečná publikácia, alebo bude jedinečná publikácia Má celkovo 3 zväzky, 3000 strán, od viac než 200 profesorov z Kanady, Spojených štátov amerických až po Európu. A profesor Blažo prispel k tomuto zborníku. Ospravedlňujem sa. Skrátim to. Kvôli tomuto alarmu ja sa pokúsim skončiť skôr a veľmi pekne ďakujem za vypočutie a pozornosť. Ďakujem. Now let's ask Professor Slashtan. Good day to everyone. I hope everyone can hear me. The chairman of inaugural committee. We can hear you, but we do not see you. I do my best to activate my camera, but the button is kind of mysterious to me. Dear Chairman, dear members of the inaugural committee, dear respected members of the scientific board, I'd like to present my potential review based on the documents that I had accessible to me, and I had the task to evaluate these documents and requirements applicable to be appointed title of a professor. Based on this documentation follows that applicant since the 8th April of 2019 is active as has a full-time job at the Komenského University at the Institute of European Law, and as simultaneously teaches and leads seminars in the area of European law. I can state that he's an author of one scientific monograph, since the applicant has written monograph on protection of competition in the international law. Applicant has also fulfilled the criterion of having written 2 scriptures, 2 teach books and relating to basic foundations of the common marketing politics of the European Union. Applicant has has a long enough record of scientific words in scientific proceedings abroad. Especially valuable are the proceedings that had been edited abroad and registered in the databases of Web of Science and Scopus. As the most important work of the applicant, I would like to mention the monograph partially in authorship with other authors published by C.H. Beck with a topic on law on protection of corporate competition. I can state that 193 citations or mentions is more than enough, and I would like to especially evaluate the fact that plenty of these citations relate to only to his own work. He has been tutor for at least 2 PhD students, that is more than one that is required. As far as the grant schemes concerns, there are 12 finished or ongoing grant schemes, which is more than enough. Last but not least, I can say that he's a remarkable personality and a member of many teams, of several teams, related to competition law in member states of the Union, and had made the law of European Union in context of Eastern and Middle Europe more visible. His teaching, his pedagogical activity is firmly connected to his alma mater in Komenského University in Faculty of Law, where he partakes in the profiling and realizing the courses such as European law and marketing competition. He has also a very high credit amongst the students and is a respectable contributor to EU law in Slovakia. He has also created a team in 2015. As a result of this work, led to a more broader aspect or more broader choice of offered courses and at the University of Komenského University. So, to conclude, I recommend to endorse the nomination to appoint Assistant Professor Ondrej Blažo to be full professor in the field, international field, that is the field 3.4.8. Thank you for your attention. And last opponent was Professor Csongor István Nagy from the University of Szeged. I will have myself I've been following his scholarly work since long. I have perused the application materials provided to me and the pertinent criteria of appointment, and after a careful examination, I concluded that Ondrej Blažo clearly meets these criteria. He has required teaching experience and also clearly meets requirements set out in respect to scholarly publications. I would like to highlight that the performance of Ondrej Blažo not only meets but exceeds substantially by far the applicable requirements. According to the rules, the applicant is required to have 3 Category A publications, while Ondrej Blažo has 14 of them. This means that in this very important category he meets the requirements nearly 5 times. I find this point very important, as it clearly demonstrates the international recognition that Ondrej Blažo has earned on the international scene, and not only for himself, but also for the university he represents. I have to note in this regard that I have also read the international publications of Ondrej Blažo, and I can attest that they are always of high quality and reflect a thorough analysis. The wide international recognition of Ondrej Blažo is also showcased by his citation index and participation in research projects. His scholarly works have been widely cited, including a high number of international citations, and he has participated in a high number of research projects, including international ones. Again, he exceeds the pertinent requirements about 5 times, and this leaves no doubt as to his suitability for full professorship. On the basis of the above, I can confirm that Ondrej Blažo clearly and unquestionably meets the requirements applicable to full professorship, and I support this appointment without any reservation. Szeged, June 16th, 2022. This was for the opponent reviews. Now I'd like to again open discussion. I would like to ask the applicant I didn't receive any questions, but it is a fine custom to react on opponents' opinions. Thank you very much, Professor, and thanks to all opponents. Professor Nat, I would like to thank in person, since he's not present. Thanks to all three of the opponents that they had find the possibility, opportunity to write the review and make the review. And thank you for the support, and that you have found the positive sides and aspects which you mentioned in your opinions. I sincerely perceive this support as an inspiration to further activity, research, collaboration, and further development of the science. Thank you very much for things. Now I'd like to also open the promised discussion, where the topic is, proceedings of Assistant Professor Ondrej Blažo. I do not see any voices. Yeah? We have Assistant Professor Kováčikova who would like to. I would like to support Ondrej Blažo in his path, in his way, for his under his leadership. This institute prospers in a very significant way. It's been integrated in plenty of projects. We gain publicational experiences abroad, and which is very inspirational and motivational. On behalf of the whole institute, we would like to express wholeheartedly support of him. Thank you very much for the supportive words. Which I would like to at last end the discussion. I'd like to ask the members of the inaugural committee and opponents to move to another virtual room where all the members should evaluate the proposal and vote for this proposal. I would like to ask Labuda and for the technical issues. The members should not leave this common virtual room and move to another virtual room. I can state that Professor Siman has become accessed our meeting, and as well as more participants are with us from now. This means that there's 41 of us. or to be more precise, 39 members of the scientific board. This moves us to point number
あ、ako sa to vlastne?
Ja teraz neviem, tuto niečo preberajú.
Podľa mňa budete, tam vám budú volať, podľa mňa.
A budú volať?
Sa spovedali, že hej, otázne je, že teraz budete to robiť ako, že čo povedia, to budete prekladať? Ako to chcete teraz, aby to prekladať?
Ja neviem, ja som si celkom nerozumel tomu tej diskusii, lebo to malo byť teraz konzekutívna, ale nejak som...
Ako?
Že tá diskusia, že to vlastne ja som čakal...
Nemôže to.
Nemyslím k tým otázkam, lebo ste povedali, že mám počkať, kým najprv tie otázky a potom napríklad tlmočím.
Vy ste to neprekladali?
Nie.
Nič?
Lebo tam vyslovene ste povedali, že konzekutívne, to znamená, že si vypočujem.
No ale som tak povedal, a potom som si myslel, že je všetko v poriadku, že to tlmočíte.
No nie, lebo tak to bolo viackrát zopakované, že mám najprv, že aj teda, že mám berieme ohľad na to, že to je konzekutívne tlmočené, nesimultánne. Tak ja som čakal, že teda bude tak znie otázka, odpoveď, ale potom to bolo naozaj na 35 minút, a ja už som mal, ja som si zapísal toho množstvo, ale potom to brzo skončilo.
To nikdy je dobré, lebo
ja som, to by sa dalo simultánne tlmočiť, ale mal som...
Ja som čakal náročky, že začnete hovoriť potom prvom. Kým som dal a nič ste nezačali hovoriť, ja som myslel, že tlmočíte simultánne.
No ale prečo by som mal začať, keď som vedel, že mám hovoriť konzekutívne?
Takže oni chvála Bohu nič nepočuli.
Lebo sme si to tu ešte kreslili ako scéna, že tu to hovorím simultánne, tu to hovorím konzekutívne.
No ja som čakal, že vy budete hneď hovoriť, ale keď si nehovoria, ja si myslím, že tlmočíte simultánne. To je znovu zbavra.
Čo, niečo sa stalo hrozné, či?
Ja tak.
Neviem, to je niečo.
Veď mám taký pocit, že všetko ide tak ako má. Či to sa mi nezdá? Dobre. Sekundu, ja vás hneď potvrdím.
Už máte?
Ja vidím, ale teraz oni ma budú všetci počuť, alebo...
Ja viem.
Ja tiež neviem, ja sa naozaj... ja sa tu v tomto nevyznám. Takže si mám zapnúť mikrofón, ale to ma potom budú všetci ostatní počuť.
Oni teraz to ste prikladali ako za niekto na počítač.
No celý čas, akože som takto mal pre...
Ja neviem, ja neviem, že normálne sa napríklad tam do toho a spýtajte sa tam teraz, že neviem, že to potrebujete. Že či máte prekladať simultánu niekam, alebo... keď niekto niečo povie, vy to preložíte.
Takže mám si zapnúť mikrofón?
Áno, tak, na tom notebooku a keď niekto niečo povie, tak to je to druhé slovo, ktoré neviem, ktoré si použiť, alebo ktoré to simultánne, tak to je vybrané.
Konzekutívne?
To.
Dobre. Dobrý deň, neviem, či ma počuť. Ja som tlmočník. Počujete ma? Dobre. Chcel som sa len opýtať, aby to bolo zrejme. Akým spôsobom budeme tlmočiť? Zrejme konzekutívne, to znamená po každej... Dobre. Our task from this meeting is to decide whether Assistant Professor Blažo is entitled to be appointed for the full professorship. Should you have any technical issues or regarding technicalities, please contact our IT technician, which would help you. I'd like to ask whether it would be possible to explain the way voting, the process of voting to us, since it's not very intuitive. I hereby open discussion. I would like to ask our foreign guests that just for a while of patience, we shall first. Viem, ale teraz to asi hovorím komu? Tomáškovi. I would like to ask our foreign guests to be a little while more patient. We are moving towards you, but firstly need to resolve these technical issues with Professor Tomášek. Hopefully it will not take too long. In this green area, you have to click the area where the cursor is moving right now in order to vote. Hopefully it will work. Just click on this button. Okay, now for the announcement, we move to the common virtual room where we've been before. I hope we will succeed with that.
Ale teraz je akoby vedecká rada. V rámci univerzity a teda, že posledný bod je hlasovanie o zvolení toho, čo oni ohlasovali. Takže či oni len ticho sedia a akoby počúvať, ne? Či nemusia už nikdy nič hľadať.
Teraz už budú len počúvať?
Tak. Čiže môžete akože niečo preložiť, že o čo sa jedná, že je to posledný bod, je to 15 strán, či teraz sú na nejakej 6, či pomaličky tam nebolo. Ne?
OK. This part of the program you can just follow this part of the program. Later we will move to the last point. Meanwhile, this program of the scientific board. These points concern mostly or exclusively members of the scientific board. So we'll just wait. So the translation is not needed at the moment for a while. Teraz sa dostal po komunii, si prekladať.
Aj teraz vlastne hovorili tam v strede, že teraz všetci vlastne, čo sú vedecký radio, tak teraz vlastne asi budete im to, čo si robili doteraz na také. Prekladajte.
Dobre.
Posleduje počkať na si vie.
Now I've been told to translate. to toho sa aj netýka.
No, to myslí s tým, že môžeš byť s tým pomoci. S odsúhlasil to, tak je nám vaša prednáška. A v tom čase to povedali s druhým. A teraz je to proste taký na tým čase.
Dobre, viete čo, už to nejako uzatvoríme, to dlho. Ja naozaj neviem, tak dostanem explicitný pokyn, ako nám postupovať. Postupujem tak. A potom dostanem otázku, prečo sa nepostupovalo inak.
Robíme si tam napísané máme ja. Vidíte, že prepačujem, že som napísaný chvíľu, ešte musím nájsť robotu, ktorá sa nájde netýkala.
Ja to pýtam, že spôsob tlmočenia sa vypýtame tak toto sme boli vyslovene naštruovaní, výslovne ešte aj v Francii spoločne preto. Teraz prejdeme simultánne konzekutívne, takže najprv sa predniesie, potom tlmočí, predniesie, tlmočí. Tak som teda čakal, že keď dostanem slovo, prešla celá diskusia. Ja som si zapísal, ja už som proste, a to, vieš, potom, že ja som si myslel, že vy prejdete, tak hovorím, ale keď mi niekto povie, že nemôžem povedať, že
to je asi
ja potom vyrieším s tým slovozavou, akože sa nič by som nechcel pomôcť. Takže toto nejako vyrieším, len ja potrebujem explicitné, lebo celá tá diskusia bola zaujímavá, ona by sa dala veľmi ľahko tlmočiť, ale ja som sa rozhodol.
to s tým, ale môžete nejaké také časti prikladať, že aby aspoň píšli, že sa dostalo, že super vied, aby to nebolo vtedy hluché, aby sa nemysleli, že nejaké technický problém.
Ja som mi povedal, že táto tú časť,
že čo je nás zaujímavé, to je niečo nepovedala, asi necítim. Že nejak to pár viedy, proste pre nás, veľká kanál východu, pretože máme živú celkom. Môžeš tam pár viedy iba povedať, lebo teraz je to okolo ticho a to. To pár vied vlastne čítať.
Dobre. We apologize for the long silence. The points of discussion now has been was the publication, citations, projects ongoing, or annual report, evaluation of the annual report. The longitudinal perspective of the institute. The points of discussion also being made was the events of pandemics and the new law on universities, which substantially decreased or has complicated the process of teaching law to students. Another point of discussion is evaluation of teachers. But it has also been important to identify the most successful students, and it is important to remind one on these successes. And because of that, there are parts in the annual reports when where these successes of students is being commented or mentioned. And this concerns successes in all different kinds of meanings of success, be it physical prestation or academic achievements. Just to let you know from time to time what is being discussed. We were moving past points 10, 11 and 12. That concern evaluation of scientific works, PhD studies, Still, these points do not concern our foreign guests, but we're moving towards the point 15, where we will take part again. Now the results of this vote about points 10 to 12 are being announced. Now follows the point on description of various areas that are being taught at the university. This description has to be approved. It is an open question by whom, however, but it is important that a scientific board expresses its opinion towards these descriptions. The point number 12 concerns various proposals, remarks. And now about the results on the vote on Ondrej Blažo, about his nomination for appointment as full professor in the area of international law. It was attended by 6 members of the inaugural committee, 6 because during the session, during the proceedings, we received attendance of Professor Šiman. The vote looked like follows. Out of the 6 present, 6 votes were given, 6 valid, and 6 in favor of the proposal to appointment title of professor to assistant professor Ondrej Blažo. Let me congratulate Ondrej Blažo to this achievement as the first person. Thank you very much. We shall now vote about this proposition. I would like to Professor. Are there any more remarks? If not, so I'd like to ask about the support on this proceeding. Andrei is a remarkable person, an exquisite researcher. He succeeded in promoting our university and the international context, and in a remarkable extent. And he's a good teacher as well. And his task of teaching law to students, he fulfills also in the via its very important and demanding function of vice dean. So I will ask you for support for him. So we shall now vote about point number 15, point number 13. We shall vote now. As for the result, there are 37 votes. Assistant Professor Blažo has not voted, I take it. That's all. If there is no one that is willing to vote, so I hereby end the vote process and I ask scrutators to announce the results. There were 37 votes. The result is as follows. In favor 36, against 0, abstent 1. So once again, Andrei, congratulations to your full professorship, and I hereby also end the session, and there is room for your congratulations. So I'd like to give the floor to Professor Blažo. My sincere thanks to all members of the scientific board for your support. Not only for support of myself, but for my work as well. I would like to thank the whole institute and the Institute of European Law as a whole, be it the mental or the administrative help with administration of all the documents. Without you, it would still take me up to this day to solve all these administrative issues. Thank you, Professor Svak, for your advices and your support during the preparation of today's speech, and to my opponents as well, that they found time and opportunity to work on my opinions. And last but not least, I would like to also thank to my family, which suffered this whole process with me and had to endure my mood swings and during the preparation for this proceedings. Apart from this, there was a reconstruction in the flat, so that's another complications. Thank you very much and congratulations. Since the silence tells me, I would like to say bye and take care. And bye.
Teraz si, že už je teda koniec?
Áno.